Before you scroll, before you doubt this, understand one thing clearly. What you're about to hear is not popular advice, and it's not meant to make you feel comfortable. It's meant to wake you up. Most men never hear this truth because it dismantles the illusion they've been living under. If you stay until the end of this video, you won't just learn something new, you'll see exactly why certain men are chosen without asking, while others keep trying harder and getting nowhere. Right now, there are men who don't chase, don't explain themselves, don't compete, and yet they quietly dominate attraction. They're not using lines, tricks, or manipulation. They're using something far more powerful, something internal, something most men ignore their entire lives. And once you understand it, you'll realize why effort alone never worked, why overgiving pushed people away, and why silence sometimes speaks louder than words. This video will challenge what you think confidence is. It will challenge how you approach desire, attention, and connection. You'll start to see why being available all the time weakens your position, why emotional control creates safety, and why direction in a man's life changes how he's perceived instantly. These are not theories. These are patterns repeated across human behavior. If you've ever felt invisible despite your effort, if you've ever wondered why walking away made someone look back, or if you've sensed that the rules you were taught don't match reality, then don't leave. Because what comes next doesn't just explain attraction, it explains power. And once you understand that, you won't need to chase anything ever again. Most men misunderstand what attraction really is, and that misunderstanding costs them years of frustration. They assume attraction is visual first, that youth responds to youth, that energy responds to energy, so they try to compete on the wrong battlefield. They dress younger, speak louder, exaggerate confidence, or try to keep up with trends that were never meant for them. But attraction doesn't work that way. Younger women are not responding to age, they are responding to presence. And presence has nothing to do with how old you are and everything to do with how settled you are within yourself. Presence is not charisma in the theatrical sense. It's not charm, humor, or flirtation. Presence is what remains when a man is no longer trying to be anything. It's the quiet authority of someone who is comfortable occupying space without apology. When a man has presence, he doesn't rush his words. He doesn't over-explain himself. He doesn't scan the room for approval. His nervous system is regulated. His energy is coherent. And the human brain, especially the female brain, is exquisitely sensitive to that. Psychologically speaking, presence signals safety, not comfort, but stability. A younger woman may be surrounded by men who are reactive, emotionally volatile, or internally fragmented. Men who want something from her and make that need visible. Presence is the opposite of that. It communicates, without a single word, I am not overwhelmed by you. I am not threatened by you. I am not trying to extract something from you. That lack of internal urgency is deeply disarming. What most men don't realize is that attraction often begins with relief. Relief from pressure, relief from performance, relief from being responsible for someone else's emotions. When a man is present, a woman doesn't feel like she has to manage him, reassure him, or protect his ego. She can simply be, and that sense of emotional spaciousness creates curiosity. Curiosity creates engagement. Engagement creates attraction. Older men who have lived, failed, recalibrated, and rebuilt tend to develop this presence naturally, not because they're older, but because life has forced them to confront themselves. They've learned that anxiety doesn't produce control. They've learned that chasing outcomes makes them weaker, not stronger. So their energy slows down. Their attention becomes more deliberate, and that groundedness is rare in a world addicted to stimulation. Younger women are not immune to this. In fact, they're often more sensitive to it. They live in a constant stream of noise, options, messages, and emotional volatility. When they encounter a man whose internal world is quiet, it stands out immediately. not in a dramatic way, but in a felt way. It feels different, and what feels different becomes interesting. Presence also creates contrast. While other men are trying to impress, he's observing. While others are filling silence, he's comfortable inside it. Silence, when held with confidence, becomes a form of power. It signals that the man doesn't need to prove his value because he already knows it. And value that doesn't beg to be seen is far more compelling than value that demands recognition. There's also a philosophical layer here that most conversations ignore. Presence is a byproduct of alignment. A man who is aligned with his values, his routines, and his direction doesn't leak energy. His words match his actions. His boundaries are clear, not aggressive. This coherence creates trust at a subconscious level. The mind relaxes around coherence. The body responds to it. Attraction follows. This is why younger women often describe attraction to older men in ways that confuse outsiders. They say things like, "He feels different," or "I feel calm around him," or "I don't feel like I have to impress him." These aren't romantic cliches. They are neurological responses to stability. The nervous system recognizes regulation and interprets it as strength. Presence also removes the power struggle. When a man is fully present, he is not trying to dominate or submit. He's not trying to win or avoid losing. He's engaged, but not attached to outcome. That detachment is not indifference, it's emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is one of the most underestimated attractors there is. Many men sabotage this by thinking presence is something you perform. They try to act calm, act confident, act grounded. But presence can't be faked for long. The body always reveals what the mind hasn't resolved. True presence comes from doing the internal work of regulating your emotions, accepting uncertainty, and building a life that doesn't revolve around external validation. This is why trying harder usually backfires. Effort directed outward creates tension. Tension creates pressure. Pressure kills attraction. Presence, on the other hand, is inwardly cultivated and outwardly felt. It's the absence of desperation, not the display of confidence. An older man with presence doesn't need to announce his experience. It shows in how he listens. It shows in how he pauses before responding. It shows in how he doesn't rush intimacy or force momentum. He allows things to unfold. That patience communicates abundance. And abundance, real abundance, is magnetic. This doesn't mean every older man automatically has presence. Many don't. Some carry resentment, rigidity, or bitterness. That energy is immediately felt too. Presence requires openness. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to remain curious rather than defensive. When those qualities are present, age stops being a liability and becomes irrelevant. Attraction is not about impressing someone into choosing you. It's about creating an emotional environment where choosing you feels natural. Presence does that. It invites rather than pursues. It anchors rather than agitates. So if there's one thing to understand here, it's this. Younger women are not choosing older men because they are older. They are choosing the internal stillness, the emotional steadiness, and the psychological depth that presence represents. And that presence is not something you put on. It's something you become. If you focus less on being impressive and more on being internally settled, your energy will speak before you do. And when your energy speaks clearly, the right people listen. Most people underestimate how deeply uncertainty shapes attraction. They think attraction is about excitement, chemistry, or novelty, but beneath all of that is something far more primal. The human nervous system is constantly scanning for signals of safety and threat. And one of the strongest signals of safety is certainty. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty within oneself. This is where many men lose their power without realizing it. Emotional certainty is not about knowing everything. It's not about being rigid or emotionally closed. It's about being internally stable, even when things are unclear. A man with emotional certainty doesn't collapse under ambiguity. He doesn't become anxious when someone pulls back. He doesn't chase clarity to soothe his own discomfort. He can tolerate not knowing, and that ability alone separates him from most men. Younger women encounter emotional uncertainty constantly. Inconsistency, mixed signals, emotional highs followed by sudden withdrawal. Men who don't know what they want, or who want too much too soon. Over time, this creates fatigue, emotional fatigue. So when a man enters her life who is emotionally steady, not reactive, not demanding reassurance, it feels different immediately. There's a sense of grounding, a sense that the emotional ground beneath her feet is solid. Emotional certainty shows up most clearly in how a man handles potential loss. Men who fear loss broadcast it in subtle ways. They overtext. They rush intimacy. They try to lock things down quickly. They become agreeable when they should be honest. None of this comes from love or interest. It comes from fear. And fear, even when hidden, is felt. A man with emotional certainty understands something most people don't. He understands that loss is survivable, that rejection doesn't define him, that walking away doesn't diminish his worth. So he doesn't contort himself to be chosen. He allows choice to happen freely. That freedom is what makes him attractive. There's a paradox here that's uncomfortable for many men to hear. The less you need someone to choose you, the safer they feel choosing you. Need creates pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Certainty dissolves both. This is why emotionally certain men are often described as calm, confident, or mature, even when they're not doing anything remarkable on the surface. They're not calm because life is easy. They're calm because they've learned how to regulate their internal state. They don't outsource their emotional stability to external validation, and that self-regulation is contagious. From a psychological standpoint, emotional certainty is linked to secure attachment. Securely attached individuals don't cling or avoid. They engage fully but don't lose themselves. They can express interest without anxiety and distance without guilt. This balance creates trust, and trust is a gateway to attraction. Younger women may not consciously analyze this, but their bodies respond to it. When someone is emotionally certain, conversations feel lighter, interactions feel less performative. There's less pressure to impress back, or to manage expectations. And in that relaxed space, real connection has room to form. Men often confuse emotional certainty with emotional detachment. They think being unaffected is strength. But detachment without presence feels cold. Emotional certainty is different. It's warm but boundaried, engaged but not desperate. It's the ability to say, I'm here because I want to be, not because I need to be. This is especially powerful in age-dynamic relationships. Younger women are not looking for someone to control them or rescue them. They're looking for emotional consistency. Someone whose mood doesn't swing based on attention. Someone who doesn't punish distance or reward compliance. Emotional certainty feels fair, predictable, safe. When a man has emotional certainty, he doesn't interpret every interaction as a referendum on his worth. Silence doesn't threaten him. Delays don't destabilize him. He doesn't create stories in his head that spiral into insecurity. He responds rather than reacts. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Reaction is driven by fear. Response is driven by clarity. Emotional certainty gives you the space to respond intentionally, and intentionality is attractive because it suggests self-mastery. People are drawn to those who can govern themselves. There's also a philosophical depth to this. Emotional certainty is rooted in acceptance. Acceptance that you cannot control others, only yourself. Acceptance that desire must be mutual to be meaningful. Acceptance that walking away is sometimes the most self-respecting choice. When a man embodies this, he stops negotiating his value through behavior. And here's the part that shocks people. Emotional certainty often makes a man more desirable after he lets go. When he doesn't chase, doesn't argue, doesn't demand explanations, his absence creates contrast. Not manipulation, but contrast. It highlights the stability he brought into the interaction, and absence, when paired with dignity, is powerful. This doesn't mean playing games or withholding emotion. It means being honest without being needy. It means expressing interest without attachment to outcome. It means being open to connection without being dependent on it. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value. Many men believe emotional certainty comes from success, money, or status. Those things can help, but they are not the source. The source is internal. It's built through self-trust, through keeping your word to yourself, through facing discomfort instead of avoiding it, through developing a life that feels meaningful regardless of who enters or exits it. When a man trusts himself, he doesn't fear being alone. And when he doesn't fear being alone, he stops tolerating dynamics that erode his self-respect. That self-respect is felt, and it's magnetic. Younger women are not seeking perfection. They are seeking steadiness. Someone whose emotional world doesn't feel like a storm they have to navigate. Emotional certainty offers them a place to rest, not to perform. So if you want to understand why emotional certainty matters so much, remember this: attraction doesn't grow in chaos. It grows in clarity, and clarity begins inside you. If you can learn to remain grounded when outcomes are uncertain, calm when attention fluctuates, and whole even when connection is absent, you won't need to convince anyone of your value. Your emotional certainty will do the work for you. There is a quiet misunderstanding that sits at the center of most romantic failure, especially for men who feel they are doing everything right and still not being chosen. They believe effort is the currency of attraction, that if they give more time, more attention, more reassurance, more availability, it will eventually be rewarded. This belief feels logical, even moral, but attraction does not operate on moral logic. It operates on psychological truth. And the truth is this: effort without self-respect is not attractive, it's exhausting. Self-respect is not something you announce. It's something people feel in how you move through the world. It's evident in what you tolerate, what you walk away from, and what you refuse to negotiate. Younger women, especially those with emotional awareness, are not drawn to men who sacrifice themselves to be liked. They are drawn to men who like themselves enough not to self-abandon. Most men don't realize when they've crossed the line from interest into over-investment. It often happens subtly: canceling personal priorities to be available, agreeing when you don't actually agree, staying silent when something bothers you. Over time, these small betrayals of self accumulate, and the energy shifts. What began as attraction turns into imbalance. Psychologically, this is because attraction requires polarity. Polarity requires two whole individuals, not one person bending to accommodate the other. When a man consistently prioritizes someone else's comfort over his own integrity, he doesn't come across as kind. He comes across as unsure of his value. And insecurity, even when wrapped in politeness, is felt. Younger women are particularly sensitive to this because many of them have been conditioned to manage other people's emotions. They are used to men who need reassurance, validation, and emotional labor. So when a man enters their life who doesn't require constant affirmation, who doesn't outsource his self-worth to their approval, it feels refreshing. It feels adult. Self-respect shows up most clearly in boundaries, not rigid walls, but clear lines. Boundaries are not punishments. They are expressions of self-knowledge. When a man knows what works for him and what doesn't, he communicates safety. Because predictability and consistency are not boring, they are stabilizing. A man with self-respect doesn't say yes when he means no. He doesn't stay silent to keep the peace. He doesn't chase clarity to soothe anxiety. He allows discomfort to exist without rushing to eliminate it. That tolerance for discomfort signals strength, and strength, when quiet, is deeply attractive. There's a common fear that self-respect will make a man seem cold or distant, but the opposite is true. Self-respect allows warmth without desperation. It allows generosity without depletion. A man who respects himself can give freely because he is not emptying himself to earn love. Effort becomes attractive only when it is chosen, not when it is compulsive. There is a difference between showing interest and overextending yourself. Interest says, I enjoy this. Overextension says, I need this to work. One invites connection, the other creates pressure. Younger women don't want to feel like someone's emotional lifeline. They want to feel desired, not needed for survival. When a man has a full life, meaningful routines, and internal standards, his interest feels like a choice, not a dependency. That distinction matters more than most men realize. Self-respect also means being willing to disappoint. This is uncomfortable for many people, especially those who confuse being liked with being worthy. But attraction does not grow in appeasement. It grows in authenticity. And authenticity sometimes requires saying things that won't be universally approved. A man with self-respect doesn't negotiate attraction through compliance. He doesn't adapt his personality to fit what he thinks someone wants. He shows up as he is and allows compatibility to reveal itself. That willingness to risk being misunderstood is powerful. It signals confidence in one's own identity. There's a philosophical underpinning here that's worth sitting with. Self-respect is an internal contract. It's the agreement you make with yourself about how you will treat your own time, energy, and values. When you break that contract repeatedly, people feel it. When you honor it consistently, people trust it. Trust is not built through effort alone. It's built through consistency. When your actions align with your standards, you become predictable in the best way. Others know where they stand with you. That clarity creates attraction because it reduces emotional ambiguity. Older men who attract younger women often do so because they've learned this lesson the hard way. They've over-given in the past. They've lost themselves in relationships that asked too much and gave too little. And at some point, they stopped bargaining with their worth. That shift changes everything. When a man no longer fears losing someone more than he fears losing himself, his energy changes. He becomes calmer, more grounded, less reactive, and paradoxically, more appealing. Because people sense when they are optional rather than essential. Optionality creates desire. Necessity creates obligation. This doesn't mean becoming detached or indifferent. It means staying connected to yourself while engaging with others. It means caring without clinging, wanting without chasing, offering without overextending. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value. Younger women are not impressed by how much you give up for them. They are impressed by how well you stand in who you are. They don't want to be the center of your universe. They want to be invited into a universe that already has gravity. So if effort hasn't been working for you, the solution is not more effort. It's more alignment, more honesty, more respect for your own time, energy, and emotional needs. Attraction doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to arrive as yourself. And here's the final truth to carry with you. When you stop negotiating your worth, you stop chasing validation. And when you stop chasing validation, you become someone worth choosing. One of the most overlooked truths about attraction is that desire alone is not enough to sustain it. Desire is easy. Desire is impulsive. Desire comes and goes. What actually creates lasting pull is direction. Direction gives desire a place to land. Without direction, desire becomes chaotic, confusing, and eventually exhausting. This is where many men, regardless of age, lose their edge without realizing it. When a man leads with desire, his energy moves outward too quickly. He reveals interest before establishing structure. He wants connection before clarity. He pursues before he has anchored himself. That kind of desire feels hungry rather than grounded. And hunger, emotionally speaking, creates discomfort. Not because desire is wrong, but because uncontained desire lacks safety. Direction, on the other hand, signals containment. It says, I know where I'm going. Not just professionally, but internally. A man with direction doesn't need someone else to give his life meaning. He already has a sense of trajectory. His routines reflect intention. His choices align with values. And that coherence is deeply attractive. Younger women often encounter men who are emotionally expressive but directionless. Men who feel intensely but don't know what they're building. Men who want intimacy but lack stability. Over time, this creates confusion because without direction, emotions become unstable. They rise and fall without grounding, and emotional instability erodes trust. A man who leads with direction offers something different. He doesn't rush intimacy. He doesn't push for closeness before establishing rhythm. He allows connection to develop within the context of a life that is already moving forward. That forward motion creates momentum, and momentum is attractive because it suggests growth. Direction also removes pressure. When a man's life has structure, the relationship doesn't have to carry the weight of purpose. He's not looking for someone to complete him or rescue him from emptiness. He's inviting someone to walk alongside him. That invitation feels lighter, more respectful, more adult. Psychologically, humans are drawn to clarity. The brain prefers predictability over chaos. Direction provides that predictability, not in the sense of rigid plans, but in the sense of inner orientation. When a man knows his priorities, his time is managed with intention. His attention is focused. His availability is deliberate. This makes others feel valued rather than consumed. There is a subtle power in not being endlessly available, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of a full life. A man with direction doesn't rearrange everything at the first sign of interest. He honors his commitments. He keeps his routines. This consistency communicates self-respect and reliability, two qualities that are often underestimated but deeply desired. Direction also shapes how a man handles uncertainty in relationships. Instead of chasing reassurance, he returns to his path. Instead of reacting emotionally, he responds from principle. His sense of self is not destabilized by fluctuations in attention. This steadiness creates trust because it shows that his identity is not dependent on the relationship's intensity. Philosophically, direction is about purpose. Purpose doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It simply has to be real. It can be mastery of a craft, commitment to growth, dedication to health, contribution to something beyond the self. When a man is oriented towards something meaningful, his energy changes. It becomes focused, and focused energy is compelling. Younger women often feel this before they can articulate it. They sense that being with this man doesn't derail their own life. It complements it. His direction doesn't demand submission or sacrifice. It offers alignment, and alignment feels respectful. Leading with direction also means setting the pace, not forcing it, but holding it. A man who knows himself doesn't rush milestones to secure attachment. He allows time to do its work. This patience communicates confidence. Confidence that connection doesn't need to be hurried to be real. There's a common misconception that desire is the driving force of attraction, but desire without direction feels like volatility. Direction gives desire boundaries. It makes it safe. It allows intimacy to deepen without overwhelming the nervous system. Many men fear that if they don't express desire loudly or quickly, they'll be overlooked. But what actually happens is the opposite. When desire is restrained and guided by direction, it becomes more potent. It builds tension rather than releasing it prematurely. And tension, when healthy, fuels attraction. Direction also allows a man to walk away without resentment, because his life continues. His path remains intact. He doesn't cling to outcomes because his sense of meaning doesn't collapse when something ends. This ability to detach with dignity is powerful. It signals emotional maturity and abundance. Older men who attract younger women often do so because they've learned to prioritize direction over validation. They've seen what happens when relationships become the center of their identity, and they've chosen differently. That choice reshapes how they show up in every interaction. Direction is not control, it's orientation. It's knowing your values and letting them guide your behavior. It's choosing consistency over chaos, intention over impulse, depth over drama. When a man leads with direction, he creates an environment where attraction can grow organically. He doesn't need to persuade. He doesn't need to perform. His life itself becomes the context that makes connection meaningful. And this is the final reflection to leave with you. Desire will always ask, "Do you want me?" Direction quietly answers, "This is who I am." And in the long run, people are drawn not to what begs for attention, but to what stands firmly in its own path.